everybody. Today we'll be talking about how to animate your React application. And my name is Deepa. I am a developer at Adobe, and I'm also an organizer at the Google Developer Group San Jose. I'm an ambassador for Women Tech Makers and an evangelist for women who code front-end. Time to time, I do write blogs, and here's a Linktree QR code if you want to scan and connect with me. And every top right slide would have my Twitter handle. So for this talk, I would expect you to know these things before on hand. So you should know the basics of web development and React. How do you use React library? You should know how to create. You should have created an application before. You're comfortable with all these props, components, hooks, etc. So today the agenda would be we'll talk about what is animation, why do we need it, right? And what are the technologies involved in animation? Basics of CSS, animations, and transitions. We'll talk about other libraries, and we'll at the end we'll demo with Framer Motion. Okay, so animations offers as a medium for storytelling and visual entertainment, which can bring pleasure and information to people of all ages everywhere in the world. Who said this? It was by none other than Walt Disney. So Disney said that animation is a way of storytelling to people, right? So that's what we are going to be doing in our websites too. So why do we animate websites, right? Websites attract, it attracts attention to your website when you animate them, and it acts as a guide, and it also keeps visitors engaged for a longer time. It connects with your viewers, and it also improves the overall experience of the user when they visit your website, right? Here are a couple of examples that I would like to show. For example, this is a website called Madbell. If you go here, you can see all these balls moving here, and then you have, when you hover over the email address, it's showing something. And if I go click on this, you see here there's all these moving parts are moving, right? And if you go here, and if I try to move around my cursor, it's just, you can see all these small colored boxes pixelated too, right? This is one kind of an animation. And the second one is none other than our Apple page, right? If you go to any Apple products page, I love their animations. It's so beautiful. It's so clean. It just flows, and it keeps anybody engaged, right? So if you see here, it just wants you to basically attract people to come and visit their pages, right? If you see here, see the iPad opens. So these are some of the examples of great animations. So there are some technologies to create animations. These are the ones. One, we know CSS, through which we can do transitions and animations, and we can also use JavaScript to animate certain complex actions, such as bouncing effect or stopping, playing, something around that. And SVGs are nothing but scalable vector graphics. These are, you can animate logos, icons, and diagrams, etc. You can, why people use SVGs because of its smaller file size. And you can also use Canvas for great performance. And WebGL is mainly used for VR applications and 3D. So these are the technologies used for creating animations in a web page. So now let's look into the basics of CSS. So it is transitions, which are nothing but simple movement, and animations are used for complex moments. For example, here is an example of a div which contains a square with a width and height of 100 pixels, right? The background of this box is red. On hover, right, what happens? The box gets the box width gets extended to 300 pixels, and it does it over a period of 2 seconds. So this is the main. This is as of with CSS transitions. And CSS animations are Very similar. Here, what we do is we are using something called as keyframes, right? So keyframes are nothing but what it holds the style, and that'll hold it for certain times. For example, here I have the same red box, and when I load this box in a browser, it'll go first off, and it'll change to red, and finally it'll change to red back again, and the whole animation would take a duration of 4 seconds here, right? Now, moving on to what are the kinds of animation that you would see normally in any websites. I just gave you a few examples too, like loading, scrolling, and then hover over effects, image gallery, animated background. That's what we kind of saw in one of those examples too, right? And moving on to what are the popular animation libraries that are present, in the market. We have something called the Framer motion. The Superman with the cape, green cape is green sock. As you can see, he is wearing only one green sock. And then this one is a React Spring. And we talked about CSS. And there's something called as React Transitions and React Motion. There are also other libraries. These are also popular, but we will just quickly skim through the first three on this slide. We're going to be talking about these, right? So there's something called this React Awesome Reveal, React Anime, React Move, and Remotion. So, okay, here is a trend of these libraries. As you can see very clearly, the blue line here is the recent one. I picked this up last night. So it's as of October 30th of 2022. And the past 1 year, the downloads the downloads for Framer Motion is over 1.7 million. And as whereas when you see where you can see that GSAP or the Green Sock animated platform. That's what it's called as. It's only 350 downloads, and you can see the rest of the numbers. So you can clearly see that Framer Motion is on the lead for the past 1 year. So moving on to React Spring, because this is something that I will be talking about. Hang on, if I can make this work. So the animation moves like, this is, if you can see the animations, just watch this for a second. Okay, now this library is Spring-based library. And from this picture here, you can see that React Spring bridges, it is a bridge between React Motion and React Animated. So these are other libraries. It takes the good parts of this and good parts of that, and then it's combined together as a new library. So we'll talk about all the comparisons of all three when we do it at the end. But understand that this is how React Spring works. And React Spring, you can also install TypeScript. It does not come with it, but you can install TypeScript along with it. It is basically it's a hook-based API, hooks-based library. So you would use all these fancy hooks here. If you know how to use hooks in React, this shouldn't be a problem. So the uSpring would be the basic one. So how do you install this, right? You basically do the npm install React Spring, and the same Yarn version, you can do that as well. So here is an example of how React Spring is being used. First off, you would import using uSpring and Animated, right? And then you're using uSpring as an object to accept all these properties, right? And it has from and to, if you can see. So from indicates the values of properties from which animation starts. So it starts with the opacity of 0, which is you will not be able to see it, and opacity of 1 being visible. We'll just see that in a moment. So finally, you return the animated div. right? So here is the whole thing. So here I'm using same uSpring. Here we have, if you see, uSpring has, it's an object. It has got all these key value pairs. And if you see the animation here, first it starts off with red, and then it goes opacity of 0. Then it becomes some other color. And try to understand this is how it works. Most of these libraries work in a similar way. It's just that the syntax is a little bit different, and some of them are capable of more, and some of them are, they need some love from you. So I have to open up VS Code. Just give me a minute because it got closed. Okay, here is an example of Spring. Cool. Okay, this running on. Sorry about that. Can you see my screen? But can somebody give me a thumbs up? Okay, here's an example of Spring animation. So as you can see, when I reload this thing, it is the bars are moving, and then here this is on a loop, which will disappear and appear on the screen for this text. So let's see the code pretty quickly here, if this allows me to move. Okay. Can somebody let me know if they're seeing the screen? I'm not too sure. Okay, sorry about that. Cool. So here is my project structure. I have two of JavaScript files, which one is the progress bar that we saw. If you see, I've defined the bars as an array, and it has got objects inside it. And each of them have a key and a key and a value pair, and what is the color, what is its width, and etc. And here we are animating. If you see here, we are using uSpring here, and then we are using map function from JavaScript. We are configuring it, and then if you see it we are using the animated.dev here, right? Understand that this is, if you know CSS, this should be very easy to catch up to. So this is all about, where is my thing? Okay, this is all about React Spring, right? So now moving on to Green Sock animation platform. If I can make this work. So Green Sock it's got over 50, if I can play this. It's got over 50 features. It's bundle size. The size of this package is very small, and it's got two concepts called as tweens and timelines. We'll be talking about it in a moment. And it's got also a lot of plugins to go with it, and it supports inheritance, and it's got a bunch of utility methods, and it also uses it has also got something called as advanced takers. So one thing about Green Sock is very powerful. A lot of people use it. However, there's some of them are free, and some of the basic bundle is free. However, if you want to use plugins, there are some paid versions of it. So that's one of the things about Green Sock. So like I said, it's a suite of tools. It's used by over 11 million websites. So half of the, the award-winning websites come from GSOC. And it's got core library and plugins. You can animate anything, be it SVGs, Canvas, HTML, anything that you can animate with Green's GSAP. Okay. So how do you set up? Again, you first install. If you just say npm install GSAP, it'll give you only the GSAP version. But if you want the free version of all the plugins, then you have to use this command, or the similar version in Yarn too. So finally, you import a GSAP using the import statement. Here, I was telling you about two concepts in GSAP, which are very important. One is tween, which tween is nothing but one tween is a single animation like this one. For example, I have GSAP to here we are using two method where box is your target and these are your variables, right? You use this for a single animation. You can use it if you use it for multiple ones. Here it's called as tweens. So we'll see this demo here quickly. If I can share the screen here. So this is an example of, you see the circle, right? So if I'm not too sure if people can see my screen, but I can share this for later so that you guys can take a look at it. So here we are creating a context and we are using this plugin. Note that we are using this plugin from GSAP and it says trial, right? There are paid versions. So understand that we are using this morphing SVG, and when I refresh this page, it's changing. It's basically using the morphing plugin to change it from a circle to all those shapes, and finally it comes back to circle. So this is how GSAP works. And we'll also talk about timelines. This is another core thing that you need to understand about GSAP. It can create adjustable and resilient sequence of animation. If you see the code snippet here we have on this line, we are creating a GSAP timeline. And here we are using that variable T1 in here instead of GSAP. So adding the tween to the timeline, we are now using T1.2 and not GSAP.2, right? If I try to play this thing here, see now you see everything goes one by one. So first the green went, then the purple, and then the orange one. So this is how you can create sequences of animation using GSAP. And framer motion. Moving on to the next library. This is the most popular one, right? Like I talked about. And this is a production, if I can play this. Oh, sorry about that. This is supposed to animate. Okay, there you go. Framer motion is a production-ready motion library for React. It utilizes the power of Framer prototyping tool, and it is fully open source. It's free. That's one of the main things that there are a lot of people who use Framer motion. You can with Framer motion you can use it for server-side rendering, and then you can use it for simple, complex, and for transitions and animations, and you can apply directly on the DOM elements. It has got great options for accessibility. So once you hand off prototyping from Framer, you can use them in Framer motion. How do you set this up, right? As usual, we use npm install framer -motion. That's something that I wanted to mention here. So here is an example of how we use framer motion. If you can see, you have the import statement, and then you also have something called there's a motion tag. If you see anything with a tag that start with motion, then understand that it's using framer motion, right? And you have to, anything that you want to animate, you would start off with motion. Sorry about that. Let me turn off my notification until this evening. Okay, so you will also use animate property here. We'll see how we can animate. Inside this animate property, there's an attribute. You can use a lot of key value objects too inside this. I'll just show you in a moment. So what are the attributes that you can use? Like we saw animate. Animate, you can also have an initial value, like how we added to and from, right? In GSAP and in React Spring, you can use initial and transition here. And you can also use gestures such as while hovering, while tapping. And there is also something called as variance, which we'll not be talking too much today, but I'll show you a code snippet. We can also, there are also other attributes such as drag, scroll, etc. Right? And here is, if I can get my VS Code again back. Here is an example. We'll just show this in a bit. So it runs in here. So let's see this in action. First, I have put in all the, here is an example of how we want to order a pizza, not a pizza, a pie. It looks like this. Let me. So here is this one. So I don't know whether you saw it when we loaded this page, the header kind of swirled it around and it came back. So I'm just going to refresh this. See, it just got that animation. And if I hover over this, it's going to change the color of this header, H1 tag. And here the button, when I go back and hover, it's going to be, throbbing for a few times, and then the color changes. If I click on this, you can select what is the base of your pie. I'm just going to do Brazy. And I was not too sure if you saw the other one. Let's go back here. I want to make sure that the did this. And note that when I hover over this, the color changes. Not only the color changes, if I select this, the next button came zooming from the left, right? So on hovering, the color again changes. It again beats. So it basically bounces. That's the effect that I added. So if you see here, and again, I'm using apple. I like, let's do apple pie, right? So here I change the button color to yellow. So now we have this, it says that, hey, you have ordered this flaky pie with apple filling. So that's about it. So there are some code snippets here. This is the code. And these are all in my GitHub if you want to take a look at it. So here's the home page where we had that header kind of, swirled around. As you can see, we have the attributes initial, which is starting with 0, and then it animates, and then it is fully visible here, and then the transition takes. And note that whenever you are using duration, it is already here, the type is called tween. So don't get confused with all these terms, but there are beautiful documentation of all these libraries. You don't need to know every single thing, but if you're adding a duration, then understand that it's type tween, right? So here, when we, when we did the hover over on that button, say, welcome to the world of pie, it changed this color when on hover. And the one common mistake that I was doing whenever I tried to use motion was, you see this motion tag added before every element. Make sure you also add it in the closing tag. So that's something that I wanted to say. And there's also something called this type of Spring, which is very similar to how we used it in React Spring library. So here, when we have, by default, Framer will use only Spring type. So when you don't have to mention it here, but if you are mentioning it about stiffness or damping, then it'll automatically know that it's a Spring type. So now we talked about all these beautiful libraries. I wanted to just give you a comparison as what are these. This is just scrapping these libraries, but just giving the basic overview of most of these. So what are the approach? Framer takes a declarative approach. React Spring, it uses both because it's a bridge between animated and React motion, right? So it uses both, whereas GSAP uses imperative programming. So what can be animated using Framer? You can animate. There's something called as you can create motion, like I showed you the motion tag, right? You can use motion component, or there's something called as motion canvas, but that's only used for 3D animations. So it is capable of 3D animations too. If you go to Framer's homepage, you can see all those cool examples. And React Spring uses SVGs and HTML. And GSAP, like I said, it can animate anything, right? So what is the support for TypeScript? Framer supports TypeScript off the bat. When you install Framer, it already has the support, so you don't have to worry about installing it, like in React Spring. And in GSAP, you can use a TypeScript definition, but it mainly uses only JavaScript, right? Yeah, and the animations, like I said, you can use simple and complex for Framer and GSAP, whereas you can use it for React. You can use it only for UI animations, because under the hood, if you see, it uses only a hooks API. It uses hooks under the hood. Also, GSAP, there's a paid version of it. To begin with, it's easy, but the plugins are, if you're a developer, you're an individual developer, it's $99. But if you are a person where, if you're a developer who wants a lot of plugins, it's $199. And if you are with a team, I think it goes up to $1,000. So although it is an amazing framework for an amazing animation library, it is not free. Whereas the same capabilities are there with the Framer, right? But it's not as popular as it's being used by a lot of startups. So that said, to give you a summary of animations generate interest in viewers. It increases the time people spend on your websites, and it improves your conversion rate. So there are so many different ways to do this, and there's no one right way to do this as well. So if you are asking me, hey Deepa, then what should I do? It depends on what is the purpose, right? What your users, what do you want to guide your users, right? And how do you guide your users in the right direction? What are the messages that you want to tell your users? Whether it would be a distraction or it's going to be benefiting usability. So how well you can do it, and making sure that animation takes time. How do you care about loading speeds as well? So to create stunning web animations, you can use CSS, you can use the web animation APIs already, and one of these libraries that I mentioned. However, based on the tools you choose, the process of creating an animation will be either easier or harder. So that's why it's very important. Picking the right tool is important, right? So what are the next steps? I just briefly gave you an overview of all these three libraries, but you can explore some of the GSAP plugins. They are beautiful. They are amazing. If you go to their websites, they have a lot of code sandbox samples that you can take a look at. And you can also check out Advanced React Spring. There is also documentation and other libraries, like I mentioned, some of them. And you can also try it with the React Native. And see, I think one of these libraries support both websites and native application. I think it's Framer does it too. You can also try out with other techniques, right? I just skimmed through how do you combine TweenMax and GSAP. So there are a lot of things in each of these frameworks, but there are beautiful documentation, the community support for you, and you can go from there and learn more. With that said, thank you so much. My name is Deepa again. Hope you can connect with me either on LinkedIn, Twitter, or on any, or you can also check out my event page in GDG San Jose. And these are my references. If you have any questions, I'll attend during the question time.
Thank you, Deepa, so much. We have a few questions, so let's just start with the first one. Do you know if some of these tools works in React Native?
Yes, that's what I was trying to tell you, that Framework works, and you can use React Spring too, but I'm not too sure of GSAP.
Thank you. And we have the one that thank you for the good presentation. And they guess that animation could be considered